good day, good afternoon, good night. How you doing? This is MCM and you're listening to You're Probably Right. Today we are going to have a serious conversation. Well, maybe not a serious conversation, but there's going to be a serious talk happening here. Now, of course, I'm only doing the talking, but just stay tuned.
Maybe your stupid opinions aren't right. And are you so sure your life is going so much the way you want it to go, and you're such a bloody paragon of virtue, and the light is shining out every orifice, and everyone who disabuses you of your notions is evil?
Hey y'all, what's up? You have stepped in it again. Or have I? Anyhow, this is MCM and this is You're Probably Right podcast. Now check it out. We're going to go different in the direction as far as what I'm going to be talking about today. Said that all backwards on purpose. Or did I? Usually I'm talking about matters of the heart or the experiences or the dramatic situations of my life that have affected me and have made me who I am. Well, I'm actually not gonna veer too much from that, and I have no notions of grandeur as far as who would be listening to me and how they might react to what I've said in this podcast or in past. But I will say that this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Okay? So I wanted to go over some stuff, and I could go in so many different directions, and I pray the Lord helps me to go in the right direction. And understand that, as I said, it is for entertainment purposes only. So if you take it this way or that way, that's your choice. If it helps what I say, as far as what I say, if it helps you to open your eyes to different ways of looking at things, then my job is done. And if it actually affects change, then it's even more done. And if it rubs everyone the wrong way, then I might be done. As far as society would look at things, if you know what I'm saying. Yes, we live in a world of that so-called funny thing called cancel culture. So you might be thinking that you're spitting the most game, or putting people up on game as much as you would like to think you are, but you might be speaking the most ignorant stuff of your life. So that being said, I wanted to talk about, first of all, the Ontario Human Rights Code, and as it affects and interacts with what actually happens in the school system. Now, I'm not going to get into who I am as far as the school system is concerned, but I will honestly say that I have worked at 4 different school boards in Southern Ontario, and I have worked in the capacity of at least 5 different positions, all support staff, by the way. So I am not a teacher, but I've spoken to many teachers. I've heard the grumblings of many teachers, administrators, office staff, caretakers, principals, and some superintendents. In my travels and in my employment with the various boards, I can say that 2 were public and 2 were of the separate school board. So I will talk about the closest thing that would be dear to my heart, or the closest thing that I've had the most experience with, and probably have the most understanding, knowledge, and I guess it'd be most relevant to my life as well. Now, remember what I say, it comes from the lens of a person who is Black, a person who is of West Indian, Jamaican origin, a person who was born and raised in the GTA, even more specifically North York, and it comes from a person who is a father, who has been a single father, and that means, I don't mean I've have kids and they're with their moms, but I've had kids, raised them in the area, and I was the custodial parent for over 15 to 16 years, I guess. Now a couple of them are adults, so they're on their own, sort of, even though I sound young. But I was in a meeting the other day, and I have really, it's amazing. I will say that I was in a meeting that I wouldn't normally have been in because of the capacity that I usually work in. I generally don't interact with the people that were holding the meeting, nor were participating in the meeting. And it's funny to see the different mindsets of the people who work in the schools and the people who support the schools. It's so crazy because I believe they're having the same struggles, but they have no idea what the others think. Now, I was shocked to know that many of the people who work at the board level, in various offices around the board, have never actually worked in the education system as far as teaching the students. The people in the office buildings, the people at 1550 Yonge Street in Toronto working for the TDSB, the people in York, the people in Durham. There's many people who work in the offices that have no clue. And you know, it's funny because many people's argument against the one time, now time, maybe time is up, Stephen Lecce, the education minister in Ontario, in 2020, 21, 22, as far as I know. That may not be the case when you're listening to this. But the one knock that I always heard on him was that he has no kids. Not sure if he was married or is married at that time, but he might be. But he has no kids. He was never a teacher. He's never been an educator in a school. They look at him like a politician, so they don't know. He doesn't know from, I mean, he would know as a student, I suppose. I don't know where he was educated, but he would know as a student growing up, if he was growing up in the Ontario area, in the GTA. I don't know. I guess I could look it up. I just try not to have you people sitting there waiting on me, but I mean, just for conversations, let's just see. Conversation. Now, if I can only type faster, I don't know what it's gonna say about him. Let's see. Education career. Lecce attended St. Margaret Mary Catholic Elementary School in Woodbridge. Okay, so he's York Region educated, and the York Catholic District School Board, a board that I did not work at, by the way. And he's educated in Western. The university is having all those problems with the masks. Yeah, let's see. Yeah. Waterloo. Sigma fraternities and a fraternity too. Oh, great. Anyhow. Well, he did win. He doubled the next person, which was Jillian Vavona, who was a liberal candidate. He was progressive conservative. Yeah, it was pretty much a landslide at the time. Somehow I don't think it'd be that way now. But looking through the lens of, say, and I've talked about this, but I'm just gonna broach it a little bit, as far as the black students' situation is concerned in Ontario, and even the First Nations situation, which, you know, the funny thing is, or what I don't think should be happening, is them being lumped together, because their situations are so, I don't even know who allowed it, really, to tell you the truth. Let's see if I can even, I try not to say it, but just speaking with some gentlemen who are from the I can't even say it, Anishinaabe peoples. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Anishinaabe, I think. Anishinaabe. I'm pretty sure I'm not saying it right, but just speaking to these gentlemen and, you know, really trying to figure out what their people would want in this time. Listening to a gentleman by the name that many people know, Murray Sinclair, talking about how the First Nations people of North America, I don't even know if that's proper. There's so many different ways of speaking. And that's one thing I'm going to say. You know, some people, like my parents grew up, they called First Nation people from North America, from the West Indies, they'd call them Indians. Some people would call them Indians. Some people would call them natives. Some people would call them of Mayan descent. Some people would call them Arawaks. Some people would, like, and then there's all the different tribes. And sometimes you don't even know how to speak of the people, so you don't even want to say anything. It kind of goes to the thing with the intersectionalities and the you know, the gender identities. Sometimes you see someone who was born a female, and maybe they believe they're not cisgendered, but they, you know, you just don't know what to say. So sometimes people say nothing, and that's one of the things that I would for sure say, that there's so many people who are scared to say things. And that's how I stood up for the people who work in schools. Although I don't agree with many of the people who work in schools, I'll say that many of them come from an area of fear. So when we talk about some of these topics, and they try to have these conversations in small groups and then larger groups, and just being a fly on a wall of many of those conversations, I've found that a lot of the participants in these conversations, these small groups and then larger groups, they don't know what to say. Many of them are scared to be canceled. Many of them don't want to offend. Many of them are ignorant. Many of them are too close to retirement that they don't want to risk educating themselves in a different way, or trying to educate students in a different way than they've always done and have the teaching materials to back up. And there's so many reasons why the people are not represented, the people are not educated, you know, as far as people such as the Anishinaabe, peoples are concerned. And I'm sorry that I'm not even pronouncing it properly. Anishinaabe, I think. But I realized that their plight is totally different. It says in Anishinaabe, or it says oh my gosh, Anishinabeg, Adjectival Anishinaabe. I know I'm saying it wrong, so I keep saying it over, thinking that hopefully my lips will do it the right way. Are a group of culturally related indigenous people present in the Great Lakes region of Canada and the United States. They include the Ojibwe, including the Saulteaux, hopefully it's Saulteaux, and Oji-Cree, Odawa, Potawatomi, Mississaugas, Nipissing, Algonquin peoples. And but even within them, they want, of course, because they're different people, the different people in different areas, that they want different things, but in most cases they want different things than the Black diaspora want. The people who have been displaced from their culture, their lands, as far as the Black people are concerned, and even the plight of people from places like Jamaica, St. Kitts, St. Vincent, Guyana, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Croix, St. Martin, St. Martinique, what was that? I can't think. But the whole of the West Indies, people from those places, St. Kitts and Nevis, it's funny when they pop up in your head. It's like you have no point. You have no choice but to say it. Antigua. But their plights are different from people who have come from, say, straight to Canada from, say, the Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, Botswana, the different countries in Africa. And even Africa, you can't say just Africa, because a lot of parts of Africa don't even have your typical, what you would think, Black people from. You know, their plights, their issues with Canadian society, as far as being a multicultural society, is totally different and set apart from the experience from the people who are West Indian. And even like Sudan, Ethiopia, and those two places, their experience and what they need from Canadian society is different from, say, the people who are from, I guess I would say they're all at some point victims of the transatlantic slave trade, transatlantic slave trade, but they're obviously affected in different ways. So, as I was saying on another podcast before that, when I was sitting in on a graduation at this time when I was sitting in, which was just a year ago, less than a year ago, the university, it's now the Metropolitan University in Toronto, and it's not even the Metropolitan. Is it Metropolitan? I don't even know. It was Ryerson University. Let's see. Yeah, Metropolitan University, but it is in Toronto. So Metropolitan University, Public University in Toronto. So eventually it's probably going to turn into Metropolitan University of Toronto. But I mean, I'm sure it's not, because nobody wants to mix it up with the University of Toronto. But sitting in a graduation in the humanities stream of things, when I listened to the names, now I'm not saying that there are no West Indian Black people who have African names, because that would be totally untrue. But knowing my people, I can honestly tell you I can't even, the worst thing you can do is throw out statistics or percentages when you really don't have the numbers. But I could have probably counted on maybe my two hands the amount of West Indians that were being called as graduates. And I wouldn't have enough hands or feet or fingers and toes to count the amount of graduates that were coming straight, you could tell, who were immigrants from African countries, straight from African countries. And I realized that there's so many of them that are prospering, and that is great. It's funny. Growing up in Toronto, I can honestly tell you that and I'm sorry I'm going all over the place. I realize that I'm just travel with me, because I'm sure many of you, as you're listening to this, some of you will know more than me and some of you will know less than me. And if you just kind of travel with me a little bit, and maybe if you're with somebody else, you can kind of pause me and maybe fully talk out thoughts that I'm just kind of touching on. I'm still going to get into the Ontario Human Rights Code and the things that it entails, or the things that are included as far as discrimination, which it prohibits as far as discrimination is concerned. But I just wanted to get through this thicker part. But the amount of graduates coming from West Indian countries is really, really small. And I can honestly tell you that most of them would be, even those would be from places like Barbados, and a few from Trinidad, a few from Guyana possibly, but least the most maybe known or popular country, Jamaica, has probably the least, and have had people here in this country probably longer than most of the others, or at least a larger population, although it is a larger country as well. So realizing, like, say, my family has been here since 1966. When we look at the education, and I can put it back to my family because this is an experience, and it's an experience of one family. So, of course, I'm sure there are many people who can relate, and there are many people who probably don't relate. But my parents came here my family started being here in, I would say, first I told somebody 1966, but it was more 1965. But my father was employed by the CN Rail, just in maintenance, probably caretaking at the very beginning. And he worked himself up there, and he was able to sponsor his family, as far as his immediate family are concerned. At that time was 2 children and his wife. And eventually he was able to sponsor at least another 5 to 6, maybe more family members, and then maybe a few friends as well. And my parents actually also sponsored, and when I say sponsored, brought over for permanent residency, and then also landed status and finally citizenship. But my aunt's family, who passed away recently, her as a single mom and 5 kids. So my parents, because both of my parents were working full time and handling their business, I guess one would say that the government entrusted them to be able to sponsor many people to this country. But that experience back then was so different. But I can say, just from our immediate family, when I think of education, we had the opportunities in a sense, but we didn't, because back in those days, if you came from most of the West Indian islands, you were held back for one reason or another. Most of the time, students were held back because they spoke broken English, so it sounded so ignorant to the teachers that they just figured that these students' grasp of the English language was lower, broken, understandable. That's a weird way to say it. They were able to understand how they spoke most of the time. The speaking was very fast, broken English, even though the education there was, I guess, by way of England in some respects, just like Canadian education, but for some reason we were held to a lesser standards from most of those countries, except for maybe Little England or Barbados. But they had the same thing as far as the language problem. So many of them had to fight to, I guess, maintain their proper grades or the proper place that they were as far as education in their own country. And when they came over, so they weren't generally thrown back 2 grades like most Jamaicans were. But there's so many stigmas surrounding Black people in this country, and so many stigmas surrounding First Nations and Indigenous peoples, and their plights are different. So we have this thing called BIPOC, but it's like I believe that these things need to be totally separated, not jammed together in some acronym. And I can honestly tell you, I'm really getting tired of the acronyms. I don't know. It seems like whenever KFC became KFC instead of Kentucky Fried Chicken, it's like everybody, like, it's just not, forget about language, forget about understanding words or how to pronounce words, like my fighting with Anishinaabe. It's sad, you know, not being able to pronounce people's names, and it's just because you're out of practice in many cases and for lack of trying. You know, but, you know, I did ask these 2 gentlemen, going back to asking to the gentleman about what Anishinaabe plight were, or what they wanted as a sovereign, as sovereign nations, you know, the different tribes, the different peoples, you know, and of course, the proper answer was, it depends who you ask. And obviously, it's like, what if somebody said, what do the Black people want? You know, the Atlantic slave trade. What would you like? You know, the ignorant and the disgruntled would say, we want reparations. I think, and then it's like, well, how do you quantify that? Who is entitled to this money? I mean, you have different levels of Blackness, right? You have people who both sides of their family were slaves, and then you have, you know, just as parents, and then you have one parent that was and one parent that wasn't. You have students, or you have people whose family were one Black grandparent, and the rest were white Indian and Chinese, or white Indian and West Indian, and like, there's so many mixes. So it's like, who would get what? So I think that's never going to happen. And I don't think that will happen for any nation, because the amount of money that would have to be dealt out would probably bankrupt most countries if there was a substantial amount of money given. I mean, you can't say, okay, we're going to give $4 billion to the African diaspora. Once you once you split up that money, everybody's getting up with $170 or something. Sorry. And of course, I didn't do the math at all. I'm just guessing. But that's not going to happen to the people in the United States, unless, of course, the dollar is totally devalued like it is in Jamaica. And it's not going to happen in Canada. Let's see. Jamaican dollars in Canada. One Jamaican dollar is worth almost a cent. It's worth 0.0087 or 87. It's pretty bad. So, wow. Just looking at the money here. This looks like 200 Jamaican dollars would give you $1.76. Maybe that's not right. I don't know. Oh, but and yeah, the way they value your money is how you value. Seems like how you value the people as well. I don't know. Maybe not. Let's just see. Let's see one of the more educated places in the West Indies, and yeah. See, one Bajan dollar is 65 cents in Canada. It's not bad. It's not good, but it's way better than the West Indian. I mean, Jamaican dollar. It's interesting. The different checks that you can actually do. Let me check out another one. Trinidad's 19 cents. Wow. Okay. Anyhow. But it is interesting. But it's just the countries need so many different things. The nations need so many different things. And as I said, going back to sitting in that meeting, I realized that nobody has an idea. The time is not spent properly. People are disgruntled about how the money is spent and what the money is going on. People can't decide whether that teachers don't want to teach, or if they don't know how to teach, if they're not invested, if they don't believe there's a worth in teaching the histories of the people that are being educated, except for maybe the countries that many of them are lending themselves to, as far as various aspects of the different cultures that are in Canada per se. Like maybe it would be Chinese medicine, maybe it would be Eastern ways of meditation, maybe it'll be various ways of construction of the Middle East, or like it seems like they're placing upon the people who are here the values of their respective countries. It's like not what you gave back then that matters. It's what have you done for me lately? Do you understand? So there's a lot of naturopaths who are of Asian descent and of Indian descent as well, South and East Indian. There's various doctors from those places. Maybe the infrastructure, the way that they build in places like Russia, like Egypt. I don't really want to call out the different countries, but if you're a Canadian, you know what the different countries bring to the table. these days. So nobody cares about the West Indian, the Jamaican people who are farming the lands or are picking the produce from the various farms in Canada. Like, those are not important. It's like, who cares who's putting the food on my table? They don't seem to matter. Even the farmers themselves don't even seem to matter as far as what they're allowed to produce, what they're able to produce, carbon footprints and pollution and all those different taxes that they're up against, and how they are able to produce and bring stuff to the table. But the value, the positions that are out there for various people of color vary hugely. And you can look at the dollar amounts, even like just the value of the money. It's sad. See, the rupee is not even that bad, but there's so many people that the way that the Indian people have spread themselves out with the huge population they have, they're doing well. And you know, people from Sri Lanka and the surrounding little countries, they're doing well in the countries here. And many of them a lot of time barely speak English when they get to Canada. There's English-speaking people from the West Indies who can't seem to make it at all. They're not valued. They're not put in positions of authority. They're struggling to get jobs that can actually pay their bills. I mean, anybody seems to be able to get a job that pays $14 or $15 an hour, minimum wage in Ontario right now. And I think that's the reason why there's so many jobs open, because if everybody's going to pay me the same amount and it's almost a living wage, I might as well go exactly where I am the most comfortable and where they're not breaking my back to make minimum wage. So I think that's the reason why there's so many jobs that are open. So it looks like, we've created so many jobs by raising the minimum wage, but then you've also not made things very competitive. So it's like, I'm just going to move around till I find a place that I want, or till a place that's going to pay me maybe double what minimum wage is. So these are some of the things that people are dealing with. And I want to get over to this human rights code, but I don't even know if I should because my thoughts are not going exactly how I was hoping they would on these topics. Let's see if I can find something on here. Let's see. No, it's not here. But you look at the Human Rights Code, and it says Ontario Human Rights Code, the code, was enacted in 1962. This provincial law was the first of its kind in Canada. The code prohibits discrimination against people based on 17 protected grounds. Code grounds, in other words, in a protected social area. And one of the problems with this is it's social. So everything is based on social aspects, and they are all brought to the forefront as major issues in and of themselves. So let's hit the more difficult ones. We have sexual orientation. So obviously that's who you are attracted to and who you would like to develop a sexual relationship with, I suppose, right? From a Christian standpoint, that should be a no-brainer. So a man should go with a woman should go with a man, period. Boom. We know that in society, that's not the way it goes. Society is totally different from what the Bible says. And many people have this huge thing about Christianity or against Christianity because of what happened with residential schools, because of what happened in many countries where Christianity was jammed down people's throats. Their cultures were thrown to the wayside, and in many cases, they say, because I was not there, but it seems like the people were considered uneducated, uncivilized natives and jungle people, and these people needed to be taught the ways of the Lord, and it was basically by hell or high water. To that respect, they were going to learn, right? And that's where they look at all, when we talk about the grave sites of the school children who were brought up in the residential schools and treated horribly. But I saw something in the conversation where they were saying, well, all of the churches probably didn't partake. It was mainly the Catholic school system. But they rope everyone in and say, but we know that they all agreed on one thing, that the people as they were not good enough and needed to be whipped with the law. Now, I can honestly tell you, in that respect, that way, no. The people were obviously misinformed when it came to scriptural things. You don't need to beat somebody into submission as far as your religion is concerned for them to obey. Maybe if the gospel was preached in another way in this country, it could have been different. And probably not, maybe, definitely. Sadly, people back in those days thought that God needed help. God says that he will make the increase. His people will hear his voice. It didn't say chop off their hair and put them in your clothes and teach them your cultural ways and make them do and go where you want them to go and worship when you want them to worship and all that stuff. So it was obviously brought. And if they want to rope all of the churches, or those who call themselves churches, into one big lump sum and say that they all were down, go ahead. I don't believe it's all true, but I know that there was a lot of ignorance back there in those days, and I'm sure even now as I speak, there's ignorance in the churches. But going back to the list, so there was first sexual orientation, there's record of offenses, and basically they're saying that people can't discriminate, should not discriminate against you unless in employment. So obviously if you are a murderer or charged of manslaughter or a thief or selling drugs or just a scofflaw in general, they can decide if they want to employ you or not. I mean, if you're a thief, they may not want you working at the bank, and it goes on from there. Then there's gender expressions. I'm not even sure, but maybe it's just, can I dress as a female, or can I dress like whatever? Can I dress like this today and that way or tomorrow? Who knows? Ancestry. They can't discriminate you because you come from India or because you come from Jamaica or wherever you come from. And it's funny because if I'm given a job because I am black and they want to fill a quota, is that discrimination? Because then aren't you discriminating against the person of maybe lighter skin who is more qualified, even though you're trying to not have discrimination? Isn't that reverse? When you're trying to keep out the dominant numbered population out of jobs and giving them to people who are not as qualified of different colors, I would say that's discrimination as well. And that's why many of the rules that we've brought up in this world are not going to work, because they're flawed and people are flawed. Their laws are flawed. There's always something you're going to be able to pick at. And everything has honestly gotten worse ever since they did take prayer out of the schools. And it's not just the prayer, it's the mindset, it's the people, it's the heart, it's the characteristics of the schools. Everything has changed. It was more than the Our Father who art in heaven, or it was more than that stuff. There's ethnic origin, which is different from ancestry. Whereas maybe your people are from here, but you look this way. Like, I assume it's like being a person from Jamaica, but your ancestry is Chinese, or vice versa. There's gender identity. What do you identify as? The gender identities of him, her, or the Z, or the she, her, him, he, and all these things. I was at the hospital the other day. They were asking if I would like to add a pronoun to make it, I guess, easier to identify me. I just said no, because it's not my way. And that's another thing. When you think of all this sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, do we have to be with it? Like, really? Can't I think for myself? That's what I honestly would like to know through many of these things. And it's the same thing with what they're teaching the students or trying to have black grad coaches. It's like, do these coaches think for themselves? Are they allowed to think for themselves? Are these teachers who maybe don't fully, or who are not fully on board with the actions at hand, are the different things? I can't think. Not thinking of the word right properly right now. But are these people allowed to think for themselves and then have a conversation or several conversations or arguments over how and what should be taught? We go, like, it's getting so mixed up. You can't discriminate on the person's sex, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, marital status. It's just, they're nitpicking at every little thing. And I can honestly say there's people who have behaviors regularly and call that or those things a part of themselves. And they're forcing everyone to respect everything and every way. And if you have a belief system, if you have a religion, it's like, don't these people care that you don't believe what they believe? And don't they understand when they try to push these things down people's throat from history, it doesn't work? Are you going to just try to indoctrinate the children into these mindsets and pillory any adults who were brought up in a different time and who have a different way of thinking on many of these topics. This cancel culture. To me, it's just getting sick. You know, place of origin. So it depends on how far we're even going back. You know, there was a time when I was working at a certain school and they had more Jamaicans in the school than they had black people. They had more people from other parts, other nationalities or other colors, creeds. Well, I like, honestly, it's getting so mixed up. But they had more people who were from looked like they're from other places that were from Jamaica than actual black Jamaicans. I guess is the best way to say it. So they had Jamaican Chinese, they have Indian Chinese, white Chinese. White Jamaican, Italian. Like, it was just a bunch of different people. But we're just going to, oh, you're from here, so we're going to nobody's going to do that outright anymore. And if they do it, it's a side comment. Side comments are there. Trust me. When somebody's friendly with you, they think it's okay that they can talk about that culture because they're not talking about your culture and everything sits well. It never does. People think it does. And we sit there and we listen. Some of us will cuss the person out, but for the most part, we just listen and say, if you're talking about this brown person, what do you think about the black people? Or you talking about white people in my face, but you treat black people worse than you treat these white people that you're talking about. So what does that mean? What do you like? Would you let my daughter, my daughter marry your son, or my son marry your daughter? If we ever asked you for a truthful answer, and it was private and not documented, the answers you would probably get would probably shock most of you, even for those who are well-wishers and do-gooders and fighting for social justice. You'd be surprised what they think personally. You're not supposed to discriminate against people's race, family status, disability. And again, disability. What disabilities? Only the physical ones? Or is it the ones that are mental? Or are those the ones that are obvious, that, one leg missing, one arm missing, blind, can't hear? Or are we talking about dysgraphia or dyslexia or autism or Down syndrome? Like, are we talking about like the spectrum of autism? Like, what are we talking about there? Because these discriminations happen all the time. They're looked over all the time. They are put in various tiers. And only when someone really, really takes the system to task on various aspects of this human rights code, the 17 protected grounds, you have to take them to task for age, color, citizenship. Not really. Even the citizenship's not even a big deal anymore. But age, that woman, La Flemme at CTV, who swears blind that the reason why she lost her job was because she refused to color her hair. Maybe that one producer didn't like it. Maybe he wanted to go younger. Maybe he didn't see that the gray or white hair was a sign of wisdom in his culture or whatever. But I guess the point is, like, the human rights code is flawed for sure. And even worse than that, the people who are trying to execute the code are flawed for sure. Money, finance is not being put in the right places, in the right amounts, even to deal with some of these things. I'm a person who I don't even believe in an Afrocentric school. I don't believe in Black History Month. I'm for Black excellence as it naturally comes to be, but I am not for pushing it and forgetting about Black mediocrity, which obviously is going to be a greater part of the culture. So yes, there'll be a Black kid over here who can split an atom. Amazing. There might be a Black kid over there that can break 10 seconds in a 100-meter sprint. Amazing. There may be another kid over there that can rap faster than Busta Rhymes. Amazing. There might be a Black kid over here who is amazing at MMA. There may be a Black kid over there that's amazing at fencing or amazing at science as it on a whole, or an amazing Black dentist. And I'm just staying with the Black stuff, but you got me. Like, you're all over, sure. And then there's the dude that's just a caretaker. There's the dude that's just an EA. There's a dude who is just a garbage man. There's a dude just working at the community center. There's a dude that's a personal trainer. There's a dude who works in a factory. There's a dude working at McDonald's. Black. You know, the initiatives that everything's an initiative. Everybody needs a decree. Everybody needs some type of acknowledgement of something. We're going to acknowledge everything, every faith day, every diamond day, everything. And, you know, the funniest thing that I probably learned, and this may sound corny, but it was from the movie The Life of Pi. When the main character's father said, if you're going to be doing this Catholic, this Protestant, this Muslim, this Hindu, this, and you believe in everything and you're going to take a piece of everything, he said basically, believing in everything is like believing in nothing. You have to decide. This country has to decide. I was told that this country isn't even a country. It's more of a corporation or a conglomerate. And it's all based around money, finance, and how much you're worth to them. And, you know, maybe they're right. But I realize how far back we are. And someone like me, yeah, I can talk on my podcast, but growing up in Toronto as a so-called marginalized student and being bullied by not only students in my class but by my teachers have made me quite apprehensive about public speaking and trying to articulate my words properly in some normal fashion to more than 300 or 400 to 300 people at a time live. I can't do it very well. It annoys the heck out of me. Why? Well, first of all, if I'm not prepared, I am a person living with so-called mental disability. I probably struggle with dysgraphia and maybe a little bit of dyslexia, but there's so many thoughts and there's so many ideas in my head, but it's like to get them out while somebody's staring at me. It's not easy because I was made the center of attention in so many bad situations in my childhood. Some things don't leave you. There's traumas. Yeah, I agree. There's all kinds of traumas. But I could help personally on a person-to-person basis. I've also realized that there's negativity that comes with me being me and seeing the things and experiencing the things that I have experienced and seen. it makes it sometimes difficult for me to have an objective conversation about certain things, because the certain things that have happened and I've seen are not objective, they're subjective. And for me to keep an open mind when I've seen slaps to the back of kids my color's head, or my ears pulled, or asking if I'm stupid by my teacher that I had for 2 straight years, and his attitude towards me. How do you think I learned in his classroom? But then when my mom would come to a parent-teachers meeting, oh, how nice he spoke to my mother. But treated my mother's son as garbage. And my mother was none the wiser. And so many students can attest to that. How do you fix? I honestly don't know. I had questions for myself. I even wanted to ask, because the gentleman that we were speaking to from those nations, to the plain eye, maybe they were able to tan, so their color might be slightly darker than the average white person. But if they were black, or of black ancestry or African ancestry, they would be called white passing. I didn't even get to ask that question, or the caste systems in those nations, because if I saw these gentlemen down the street, I would just look, oh, there's another hippie looking white dude. There's another big Scottish looking or Norwegian dude. But apparently they're indigenous. They're First Nations. I had no clue. And their squabbles, their issues with society, the Canadian country, the country called Canada, the North American way of doing things these days may be rubbing them the wrong ways, and they may have legitimate squabbles and problems. But I could honestly say, if you decided to put on a pair of penny loafers and a suit from Tom Ford and combed your hair in a certain way, that you would just look like the typical white man. And you could probably get a lot of stuff done, possibly. Whereas me, there's nothing I can do about this color. Now, maybe if I try to make all of my deals on the radio or on the phone, maybe I could get away, as long as I made sure that I speak proper English and that there was nothing detecting or nothing to detect my heritage or my cultural ancestry. Maybe I can get some stuff done that way. But my point is that their fight is different. And I'm tired of the two situations being lumped together. Even the two situations of the African and West Indian African plights being jammed together, because they're different. The level of education in the countries are different. The infrastructure is different. The people who represent power in the countries are different. There's different, but yeah, we have the same shade of black sometimes. Anyhow, this has been another episode of You're Probably Right. And this is MCM, who has talked off your ear. And I know that I haven't fully finished any one argument or train of thought, really. But we're not going to be able to do anything about anything until everyone cares about everything, and that's never going to happen. You can stick that in your head and smoke it. I should end there because there's not much else to say. But there's just so much more to say. If you want us to put focus on these certain things, these call to actions, these initiatives, then put your money where your mouth is. Don't just say you want to do these things because you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's. Be real. Be really intentional. And if you're not, we're going to know. And if you're not serious about these things and you're only crossing the T's and dotting the I's, we will know, we will recognize, and we will give it that much effort in most cases, especially when we are on the way out of our career rather than on the way in. If you want to affect change within the Black community or the First Nations or Indigenous peoples, then you have to speak to the parents of the students you're dealing with. Don't do what the early Canadians did and just take the children and brainwash them into or adopt them into your way of thinking and try to get them to be almost like tattletales or secret agents in their own homes and say, my mom said this, my dad said that, call CAS. Maybe you need to deal with the parents who weren't taught and who are older and who the children do look up to. And stop putting everything on the children's plates. Many of the parents don't know how to deal with these students that you are developing in these classrooms that social media is molding these days. How many parents sit down at the table and eat with their children anymore? How many parents have time? I mean, what kind of things do you think are places to live in this day and age in the GTA that you can make, even if you make double 15, even if you make double what minimum wage is? What do you think you can afford? Do the math, do the deductions. And if you're single like most people are, what can you afford? No, you can't afford it. Most of the time you have to do a second job just to think about affording whatever it is. And society is so rich now, we all don't realize the amazing luxuries we have this day and age. We have electricity, people. We have refrigeration, people. Most of us have a washer and a dryer in our home, and if not in our home, then elevator right away. Many of us have a bus pass or an actual vehicle that we drive or share driving with. Most of us have a place to go to get our hair cut. Most of us have a place to go if we feel sick. Most of us have health care that we can get something from a drugstore to cure or heal or at least mitigate issues medically. There's so much difference between where many people have come from to where we are now. Don't be so selfish. Don't be so one-sided about things. Try to look at things that other people are dealing with, but try not to overtake those situations and make them your own and be the proprietor of all things Black or of all things Indigenous. Just work alongside these people if you want to help them. All right, this is about all I have to say. As I said, I know from listening to myself or reflecting each time a sentence came out of my mouth today, I know that things came out choppy. It was always better when I had a list of things right in front of me so I could keep things on track and on point. But of late, I haven't been able to muster up the concentration. So sometimes I have to come out and just blather a bunch of different ideas. And I'm just hoping that some of these are flying right into your mind for you to think of, for you to divulge, for you with each other, for you to dissect for yourself, for you to come up with answers, for you to do actions, or to come up with actions to combat the many things that are a problem. But I'm going to still say again, and I heard this from the great, and still here at this point, John MacArthur, when he says that anything you put in front of justice perverts it. So we don't need social justice, we just need justice. We don't necessarily need equality in every sense, but we just need equal opportunity. And it doesn't mean give me the job because I am this or I'm that. Educate me like you educate everyone else. And at the same time, when I say that, I honestly don't know how they're going to de-stream math unless they don't hold calculus, trigonometry, functions to the high standards that they once did. Then maybe they can do it. But if there's still value in these areas, then de-streaming is going to be a huge challenge. And I am so excited to see what happens in the next couple of years. Why am I personally excited? I can't be honest why. I can't tell you why. In the next few, and I'm saying like the next 2 or 1 year. Anyhow, what I've said today may not age well, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. And if they don't age well, that's because somebody's doing something about what I was talking about, or I was misinformed and unlearned in certain areas of whatever it is that I was speaking of. Anyhow, till next time, this is MCM, and this is You're Probably Right. Take care. Hey, come check out You're Probably Right podcast. Society is getting more unpredictable every day, but at the same time, predictable in its unpredictability. Say that 4 times real fast. Come with me as I attempt to find clarity in all the fog while staying way outside the box and kicking the box way down the road with my size 12 docs. I use the Bible, experience, education, fortune, misfortune, life's lessons, life's mistakes to sort through all the mess. I talk about news, God, God, self-help, sports, sickness, health, music, parenting, love, humbleness, hurt, pain, joy, and all the things that might make you say, I never thought of it that way. Hopefully anyway. Also, I take a stab at answering tough and not so tough questions, and all the while understand that, listen, sometimes you end up in the hot seat and there's no thermostat. Well, that's how it is here. And because there's no topic, very few topics off the table, Torontonians will understand that Doug Ford reference there. Hopefully the podcast will be helpful and uplifting. And hey, maybe you'll find your own private Idaho here somewhere. Hope to see you soon.